Hello, everybody. Welcome to CRE TV Live Beta, or as the British and or Australians say, beta. I don't know, it's a little weird. This is a beta because I've been spending most of my time trying to get this to work properly. The program is really good. If you're interested, I'm using a program called Ecamm Live, which is also in beta. And it works pretty well and it's very affordable. This show, which is different from my webinars, it's going to be an interactive news type live stream where we discuss recent news and other information to those interested, scratch my nose, in commercial real estate. I encourage each member of the audience to write comments and questions in the YouTube chat. So you should be watching this on YouTube. I can't tell how many people are watching this. If you are watching this and anybody's on here, I'd like you to begin with, type in the chat, the YouTube chat, where you're watching this from and let us know, because I'm in Las Vegas at the moment. Melissa is in Nashville and Jody is in Houston. So we're all over the place. I'd like to mention that although I'm an attorney, I am not offering legal advice in this live stream. If you need legal advice, please contact your own attorney, or you may contact me on my website, which is hfkesq.com. All right, so let's move on now. Today's topics. Today we will be discussing the state of the CMBS market and how COVID has affected it. This will be presented by Jody Yadav, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's an analyst at TREP. We're then going to be posing a couple of questions. Recently, AMC had indicated that it's renting out theaters, and the question is this a good idea? But not enough to save them. And we'll be talking about that some more. Are investors seeing a decline in real estate values? And if so, will we see a rebound in 2021? This is a retweet by my friend Albert Bariz over at McKinley Corporation. And then finally, we will approach are commercial rents increasing, and if so, why and where? And this was thanks to a tweet or retweet by Casey Flannery, who is not with us at the moment. She had indicated that she will be appearing late, so hopefully when she comes on, I'll get totally messed up. Now, let me move on. I will have, by the way, something called X keys, which will, whoops, we're not yet to you, Melissa. Okay, so let me just introduce myself quickly. I've been an attorney licensed in California for over 4 decades, and most of my experience has been in commercial real estate with a special focus on landlord-tenant matters, including commercial evictions, commercial rent collections, lease negotiations, and commercial foreclosures. I suspect that over the next year, I'm going to be very, very busy. I've also been, and I am the host of CRE Radio and TV for almost 11 years now. I'm one of the old dogs of the social media CRE crowd. If you're interested in this video, so I can, wait a second, I can go back and hit this. Here I am. If you're interested in this video or other videos on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel and ring that bell to be notified every time that I post. I'm also providing a link to my new law office website, as well as the link to CRE Radio and TV in the description below. So now, let's move on quickly. So, Melissa Alexander, she serves as Vice President of Foundry Commercial Real Estate, works on the industrial services team in Nashville, Tennessee. I understand that she is going to be the third person in the debate tonight. So she's just going to walk across the street. And the debate, by the way, she just told me is at her alma mater, which I don't understand because I've never heard of a school called alma mater. That's a bad joke. Melissa has more than 12 years worth of real estate experience focusing on the leasing, sale, and development, of industrial properties in Middle and West Tennessee. She's also a co-founder of CRE Chat on Twitter, and I'll have her tell you a little bit about that, CRE Chat, and how to participate in that. They've graciously invited me to participate and dispense of my commercial real estate leasing knowledge, for whatever that might be. My next guest is Jody. It's spelled a little bit differently, Yadav. Jody is a research analyst at TREP and is a leading contributor to the firm's CMBS and CRE research and analytics. She provides key insights to industry media and other external audiences, including as a guest on multiple podcasts. She's going to be talking about what's going on in the CMBS market, and she's briefly going to explain exactly what the CMBS market is for those who are not familiar. I'm going to be skipping Casey's bio and saving that for when she is joining us. Now, excuse me, we will be moving on to, I don't know that it'll be as fun as I had originally imagined. We will be adding different music to this, but we're going to be adding this lightning round where I get to ask very embarrassing questions. And the truth of the matter is I lied to both Melissa and Jody.
Howard.
Yeah. So this is going to be timed, and I've got some questions, and we're going to start with Jody. Okay, Jody, you ready?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Where did you go to college, and what was the best thing about college?
Okay, so I went to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And well, the best thing about that was I met some really amazing, really smart people. That was my classmate, that was my friends, they who continue to be my friends till date. I learned a lot, and the best thing was in having the interactions with those people, my professor, my classmate. Yes, that was amazing.
Well, I've got, excuse me, I have to say that being in commercial real estate, I knew a lot of smart people in college and law school, but in commercial real estate, there are also a lot of smart people. Now, how and why did you get into commercial real estate? You better hurry up. You only have 1 minute and 28 seconds.
Yes, and actually, this answer is going to be short. It was actually by chance that I came across CMBS market and TREP. But since I have been here, it has been an exponential level of learning and an amazing amount of information that I have learned from that. So it was by chance, but I'm so glad that I'm a part of this now.
Okay, next question. What's the most interesting thing that you've experienced in commercial real estate?
Well, I feel like I'm giving you very boring answers, and this is going to be another one.
Well, the questions were kind of boring, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, so what I would say is the past 6 to 7 months since March is something that none of us expected here at TREP, and also in the industry. You would not expect that the shape of the industry would just change so fast, so drastically. We were going to Hawaii, we were going to Hamptons, we were going all over the place for our vacations, and all of that is gone, or pretty much gone. So that was a big thing, and that was very interesting how the entire landscape has changed in a few months.
Wow, great timing. Yeah, right on time. Okay, we're doing Melissa, it's your turn. Questions. What's the best thing about living and working in Nashville?
I think this is an obvious answer, right? What do you think I'm going to say, Howard?
I know. We've talked about it.
Well, of course, we've got Titans football undefeated this year so far. And I'm actually looking out at the Nissan Stadium out my window right here. I wish you guys could see it, but the lighting just wasn't right. And then obviously growing up, being born and raised here, it's the music, hands down. It's an incredible town to be around live music
Well,
day and night.
in about a year, I expect to visit Nashville, or when it's safe, and I hope that you'll show my wife and I around. Now, next question: how and why did you get into commercial real estate?
My answer is similar to Jody's. I came in on the marketing side. As you said, I went to Belmont University here in Nashville, where the debate is tonight. Graduated top of my class, and then I actually got into commercial real estate in Memphis when my husband and I moved there so he could go to law school. And so I started in marketing, and I worked my way up. I became a partner at my firm. And I became more client facing and eventually transitioned into brokerage on the industrial side.
Good for you, and I hope it's going well. What's the most interesting thing that you've experienced in commercial real estate?
Okay, so being in industrial, I'm basically walking vacant warehouses most of the day or touring a lot of vacant warehouses. So I've seen a lot of interesting things in warehouses, mostly dead animals. So I get to see dead frogs. I've seen tons of spiders, walked into tons of spider webs. I've seen snakes, dead birds. I've had dogs come after me. So, and as I told you yesterday, this isn't really something I've seen, but I experienced. I was standing at a dock door, on the ground outside of a dock door, and a truck was backing. A 53-foot trailer was backing up into it, and their beeper wasn't working. And thank goodness I had a partner there with me that pulled me out of the way. Otherwise, I may not be here today, sitting here live with you. So
Great.
it's interesting and industrial these days.
Great. We're moving on. Okay, we're skipping Casey for the moment, and now we're going to be moving on to Jody and her presentation of the state of the CMBS market. Oh, I'm on the last page. Let's start in the first page. Jody, you just tell me when you want me to move the slides.
Perfect, Howard. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. And I'm excited to share all that I can about the CMBS market. So let's go to the first slide. So before we really get into the status of CMBS market, let's talk about what it is. So it's one of the financing vehicle in the CRE universe, and it accounts for approximately 15 to 20% of all the lending. Now the market was created back in early 1990s, and subsequently it has gained a bigger pie of CRE lending. So what the reason why, like when it comes to trap and we are the ones talking about CMBS market a lot, is because of the fact that since the market started we have data on approximately almost everything. So let me just give a quick overview of just the graphic here. So in CMBS essentially stands for commercial mortgage backed securities, and banks would pool a bunch of commercial mortgage backed loans, and then the principal and interest payment, the monthly cash flow, would be directed to investors through bonds, which are rated differently based on the risk and the return that they provide. If we can move to the next slide, Howard.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, TREP and CMBS, as I was saying earlier, anytime you would hear CMBS, you would see TREP data cited: Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Financial Times, name it, and we are there. The reason being that since the market started, we have collected hundreds of data points on each of these CMBS loans and each of these deals. And overall, we track data of approximately like trillions of dollars worth of loans. And this includes both private label and agency CMBS deals. And what we really do is we have a lot of information flowing from different streams like servicer, trustee, and we combine all of it into single interface to provide the compiled information to our clients. So as you see in the graphic here, we have data points on loan details, which is balance, coupon, maturity, credit measures such as loan to value, debt service coverage ratio, financials of each and every property that is a part of CMBS universe. So you can see revenues, expenses, net cash flow, occupancy, and all of this data is not just current data, but actually historical data. So if the property was a part of CMBS since 2000, you would see all of these values since 2000. Again, more details about the property, who the tenants are, what the square footage is, details about bond financials, and also the deal snapshot. Can you move to the next slide now?
Oops. Why isn't it up? There we go.
Perfect. So now let's get into the status of CMBS market. And I have written the headline here as Tale of Two Markets, and I will get into that later. But let's just see the first graphic on the left side. The graphic is delinquency and special servicing rate for the past 15 years. Let me just quickly explain what those are. So a loan is delinquent when the borrower is more than 30 days behind payment, and special servicing rate essentially reflects that the loan has been transferred to a special servicer. So I don't know if it is very clear, but I will give the numbers. So the leftmost side of the top left graphic is September 2005. And when you see the delinquency rate and special servicing rate increase, that is, it started increasing in 2008 in the last financial crisis, and it reached its peak in 2012, June 2012. The delinquency rate was at the highest of 10.34%. So we see the amount of time, last time the delinquency rate, it took 4 years for it to reach that level. This time around, it took approximately 4 months, as you can see on the right side here in the graphic. So let's see what happened in the last 1 year. In the bottom right side graphic, we have delinquency rate depending on the property type. The topmost line reflects lodging loans, which are hotels, and the second line is retail. So hotel and retail have really been decimated in this crisis, whereas industrial has actually performed better. And I think it's amazing for Melissa here, the delinquency rate has actually reduced in industrial property types. So
Let me interrupt you a second. I can recall during the recession that in Orange County, California, brokers were having a difficult time because industrial was hurting. And then after the recession, after we started coming out of the recession, brokers were having difficulty because there wasn't any industrial space available. So I don't know how it is in Nashville, and we'll ask Melissa that when we're done with the presentation.
Yes. What we have noticed is the spike or the better performance in industrial is also because of the fact that there is a move from in-person or mall shopping to online shopping, and that has spurred a lot of warehouse and distribution centers, which is partly responsible for a better performance here. So let's go to the next slide.
Here we go.
Perfect. So, as you would expect, like the last financial crisis, CMBS issuance essentially came to a standstill for 18 months or so. There were no new deals that were issued. However, this time around, we are already 10 months into 2020, and the issuance is actually below 50 billion or around that time. So March, April, and a few months after that, the market just came to a standstill. But we have seen deals now which include loans which came in after COVID. So again, these deals rarely include hotel and retail properties, as we discussed that those properties are really suffering in this crisis. Next slide, please.
Sure. I got a question for you. How does the CMBS market compare in relation to the rest of the market?
So CMBS market, as I said earlier, it's approximately 15 to 20% of the universe. But the trends that we see in our data, and on the private label side, we have over $500 billion worth of outstanding balance right now, are essentially the same trends or are reflective of the overall market. Like we see hotel property valuations being like they are seeing a 30% cut. That is something we also see in the overall CRE market. So it's kind of similar, and because of the transparency and because of the amount of data visible to us, we are able to sometimes talk about trends which in overall CRE market sometimes we're not as quick to pick up.
Okay, so we're talking about the next 3 to 6 months.
Yes. So I have noted down few points here which are really important and something that we have to consider. So in CMBS market, we are seeing a lot of properties whose loans are about to mature, and if these are hotel and retail properties, which is the case, a large fraction of that is hotel and retail properties, they will find it very difficult to refinance in the current market. So that is one big problem. The second thing is that we have seen that the delinquency rate in the past few months, since June actually, has been reducing every month. But we attribute that to the fact that there are forbearance agreements being signed between servicer and the borrowers. And once these forbearance agreements expire, we might see more distress. And again, this will be a long tail of recovery because forbearance agreements right now are kind of masking the actual distress in the market. The fourth point here is, and I really added this yesterday because Trev actually published research on this today, I think afternoon, is that we have come across over billions of dollars worth of loans for which borrowers are actually giving back keys on the property and they do not want to continue making the payments, that they are just in a place where they want to transfer ownership and they do not want to continue owning the property and making the loan payments on that property, which is, I mean we knew that there are distressed assets in the market, but this is just a big data point and we're able to just pull all of that data together. And the last point here is how the CMBS market will perform is essentially dependent on the pace and the type of recovery, because at the end of the day, CMBS market, the underlying collateral is commercial real estate properties. And if we see limited commercial activity, there is no way that we would see a recovery anytime soon. So it's very, very dependent on what the recovery, shape of the recovery and the pace of it would be in the next 6 months or so.
How reflective is, I'm going to move to the questions and answers. Whoop, ooh. Okay, so how reflective is the CMBS market of the rest of the market?
Right. So as I was saying, that the bigger trends that we see in our universe are essentially the same that you would see in the entire commercial real estate market. The reason being that the loans that are part of the CMBS universe are not just like one loan located in New York, or they are diversified pool of assets. They're secondary and tertiary assets. They're not necessarily the trophy assets, that they will always perform better. So these are secondary and tertiary assets located across America and located in and different property types. So they are very reflective of the overall trends that we see in the market.
Great. So we don't have any comments or questions, and I don't know if it's because nobody is watching this live or whether or not there was an issue with because I tried this registration process and people should have gotten the link to the live, and I'm not really sure if they did or they didn't. So we don't have to field any questions except Melissa, do you have any questions?
Well, no, going back to, you guys talked about industrial, and how at the industrial side of the business is doing. I mean, we have not seen a decrease in our vacancy rate has risen here in Nashville, or sorry, it's fallen. It's gotten, tighter. So, vacancy over during, since March has dropped to 2.5%. That is like a
Wow.
record low here. So it's really, as an industrial broker, it's actually, COVID didn't do anything to, rates are still going up, space is tight. So I could see that reflected in your chart that, these landlords are still, well, I did see there was some rent relief at the beginning of the crisis, COVID, but I think these landlords are getting most of their rent and they're able to make their loan payments. So I definitely saw that reflected in your chart there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that is that, I mean, it was a surprise for us in the beginning, like how we talked about it's a tale of two markets. If you're a
Hmm.
hotel or retail property owner or you operate in that space, you are just in a completely different environment compared to how you would feel if you're operating in industrial and also self storage or single family rental. I mean, those are the markets which have actually seen down like a reduction in delinquency rate, which is essentially reflective of, I think you said falling in vacancy rates. So occupancy rates essentially increase,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember one of the stories that we had written about was Purell, the manufacturer of hand sanitizer, had signed up a very big lease in one of it. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
very early on in January, I was talking about, gee, we ought to buy stock in Purell. I always have
Yeah.
great
And
advice, but I rarely follow my own good advice.
Well, I heard the same thing. I was talking to I had coffee with somebody today, and there was a manufacturer here in Nashville that they do beans and rice, and they needed overflow space because during COVID, the demand, grocery demand obviously went up, but there's certain types of groceries that people were buying that had maybe a longer shelf life or were easier to make, keep on the shelf. So they needed overflow space, and so I think you hear like Purell, this other company. There are a lot of stories like that. E-commerce companies, which you mentioned, Jody, that are all of a
mhm,
sudden seeing that they need more warehouse space because of increased demand due to COVID.
Yeah, ice cream
exactly.
cold storage is a big thing right now because the ice cream, you couldn't get ice cream when you walked into the market. Everybody wanted to buy ice cream during the lockdowns. So that and toilet paper. I don't know if there's a relationship. Maybe if you're lactose intolerant, but be that as it may. Any other questions or comments? If anybody is watching this right now, you should write a question or comment. I don't see any. I'm not sure if it's whether or not I've messed up, but that's why we're in beta. Any other questions or comments with regard to what Jody was talking about?
Uh,
No? Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add another thing, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is that the data that we get on all of these loans comes in on a monthly basis. So that is also the reason why we are able to pick these trends up really quickly. So on a monthly basis, we will release these reports about these metrics, and that will tell you the story that's playing out in the market. So that's just one more thing to add.
Outstanding. I'm going to just kind of Go back, and we're going to move on here. So, AMC is now renting out its theaters. Is it a good idea and enough to save them? And before we did this show, Melissa asked me a question that, what do you mean by the renting out the theaters? And my understanding is that what they're doing is they're renting a whole theater to a specific group. So I guess if you have 40, 50, 60 friends who want to go to the movies, you can rent the entire theater. I'm assuming that they are being COVID sensitive. So if the theater has about 300 seats, I would imagine that they're probably only allowing about 50, 60 or so people in there. Let me also add that this announcement was on the heels of another announcement where AMC was saying that they look like they're going to run out of money by the end of this month. So this appears to be an attempt to get cash flow, which is understandable, and I think that it's a great idea if it works. Melissa, you're not an expert on you may be an expert on movie theaters, but certainly football teams. Whoa, there's Casey. So Casey, I'm going to bring you in, and Casey's in the green room. I'm going to assign her to guest number 3. So we were talking about AMC. Hello, Casey, and I'm going to bring Casey in. There's Casey. So why don't we answer Why don't we answer the question having to do with AMC theaters, and then I'm going to do the introduction of Casey and her lightning round. Anybody have a comment about AMC?
Oh, about AMC. Yes. So when you said they're renting them out, I thought, are they renting them for lease? Like, how are they renting them? That's why I asked you the question. But to large groups of people, which to me doesn't seem like it would. I'm not sure even if I'm around my extended family, if we're going to be sitting in a movie theater together. And I will say that it seems like, and I don't know what the movie theater trends were up until COVID. But me personally, I have been, and we talked about streaming things, Howard, on Netflix and other streaming platforms. I think people had obviously gotten used to doing that before COVID. And then when we were all stuck at home, people probably developed more of a habit of just sitting at home and wanting to watch things from their TV. I know we even went out and bought a nice brand new TV, especially for the Titans games that we watch.
Well, where's it located?
Okay, so that TV's in the garage. That's where we watch the game. I'll have to send you a picture later, Howard. I took a picture of the setup for you. But
I have to show it to my son, who I told you is a huge Tennessee Titans fan. I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, how did you become a Tennessee Titans fan? He said he doesn't know. He just is.
Yeah. Well, because they're good, Howard. That's a silly question.
Oh, okay.
We've got Derrick Henry, and
yes,
and we've got some really good players. So we've got a great team. But yeah, so people are probably becoming more accustomed to watching movies, video from home, and it seems like even you had Disney Plus releasing Hamilton, and was there another movie that was released during Mulan? Yeah. So I did find myself, and it seems like the opportunity may be for different production groups to have their own channel like a Disney Plus. So you pay a fee every month and then you watch it on, stream it anytime you want. That's probably not a good thing for AMC overall.
No, which in turn is not going to be a good thing for commercial landlords that are renting to AMC. Casey, you have any thoughts?
Melissa, I know you said that you guys haven't been back to the movie theater, but I've actually been twice in the past 3 weeks. My father actually came with me to watch Psycho on the big screen. So that was really cool, 60th anniversary of that movie. My dad is a bit older. He's super high risk, and he still came to the movie theater with us. Spaced out. We got the lounge chairs at our movie theater. But I just think it's interesting because I'm not a movie theater person. I don't really go see movies in the theater, and I really have been twice this month. So I think they're getting a little bit unique, not having new movies that are coming out. They're kind of converting back to old movies. Watched Hocus Pocus from the 90s, and again Psycho from 1960s. So kind of a little bit unique way for movie theaters to adapt.
That's a
My
good
mother-
point, Casey, that you bring up too. What she just said, Howard, because honestly, production now, because you can't, production of movies has halted. So even when people get back out and they are not wearing masks and they're okay going to the theater, there's probably not going to be, there's going to be a lag time, and there's not going to be movies to show in the theater for, I don't know how long it takes to make a movie, but what, 6 months, 7 months? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of this COVID. There's going to be a lot of a domino effect. You know, if people aren't going to the movies, I know that they're starting production on TV shows and stuff like that. That's going to be slower than normal. It's not just whether or not the theaters can be open. It's whether or not they can afford to be open in such a restricted fashion. I think I tweeted last week, for instance, restaurants. How much of a drop in revenue can they afford? 10%? 20? 30%? I mean, we don't really know. It probably varies from restaurant to restaurant. But restaurants, particularly if there's bars have got a very wide profit margin. But if it's not the bars, a lot of times the restaurants are supported by the alcohol sales in bars. If the bars sections aren't open, I don't know if they can afford to stay open. I'm not encouraged by all of the positive notes that I'm hearing. So, but I'm an attorney, so I'm a cynic. So, in any event, Jody, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would like to add, and I think this is mostly my personal opinion, is that, the only people I have interacted with are the part of the COVID bubble, the only people I generally interact with, and that's the group we talk to. And that's like 10 people, that those are the people I would meet on a regular basis in this time. If 10 of us decide to go to the movies, even like twice a month, or let's say 4 times a month, I don't know if they are going to be able to get enough cash to continue operating. Like, I just think of it on a bigger, like larger scale. If they had 50 people seeing each and every show, and now it's just 10 who are booking the entire theater, but are they going to be able to make enough money to survive? Unfortunately, I probably would be on the negative side, that maybe this will just be a little bit of cash that they are able to get, but long term, or even 6 months, I don't know if it's sustainable.
Yeah. Well, maybe Simon and Amazon will just buy it all up. Yeah, which is a topic for another discussion about landlords buying up and operating the tenants. So, Casey, I am going to go back and introduce you, and then we're going to do a lightning round. And I told you that because you were late, I was going to have particularly embarrassing questions for you. So, why don't we talk about who Casey Flannery is? So, Casey Flannery is a commercial real estate broker specializing in office landlords representation in Memphis, Tennessee. She works directly with landlords and owners, presenting her knowledge. I want to repeat that, knowledge, to create maximum value for their assets. Casey is also a co-founder of CRE Chat on Twitter, along with Melissa. So, wow, what's that? Okay, we got a little bit of noise in the background.
Yeah, my significant other is blowing leaves, I guess. I told him I was doing this.
Well, okay, when you do this stuff, you get all kinds of interesting things in the background. So now let me do a lightning round for Casey. And Casey, I lied. I'm not going to ask you embarrassing questions. I probably should. But I'm going to ask you very similar questions as I asked Melissa. What's the best thing about living and working in Memphis?
So I actually live in the suburbs of Memphis, and people like to call it way far out in the outskirts, but it's not. We are always in Memphis. I'm always going downtown. Really like the local eateries, and just the history behind Memphis really encourages me walking along Beale Street, and just the history that's there behind it, and the old buildings that are still there have character. Some people see it as old and not really up to date, but to Memphians, it's just the character and the history, and it gives Memphis a large story. So Memphians really like to see redevelopments of old buildings rather than seeing them knocked down and rebuilt up. So we really like to see the utilization of buildings that we already have here and the characters that they have.
Great. How and why did you get into commercial real estate? Now, that's probably the most embarrassing question that I'm asking.
Interesting. So Melissa actually was the first one to interview me in a commercial real estate role. And I was going to graduate school. I was working 2 other jobs at the time, and an internship with the company came up, and I interviewed with Melissa. And unfortunately, I just couldn't commit to the 40 hours that she wanted me to work since I had all the other commitments going on.
A slave driver.
So they actually ended up calling me back for another position that I could do part-time, and that's how I got hired in commercial real estate.
Okay. I ought to ask Melissa. She went from Memphis to Nashville. I haven't asked her why she did that. What's the most interesting thing that you've experienced in commercial real estate?
The most interesting?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, everybody probably says it all the time that it's always different every day. I really enjoy working with so many different types of people for so many different reasons why they need office space. Obviously for office, but what are they doing to need that space? Now we're incorporating working from home and how that's working into people's office life. But as many people will say, it's just totally different. Every deal is different, and the reasons why people need the space is different.
Outstanding. Okay, and now we're going to move. So talking about offices, so I'm going to ask you another question. What is going on in the office market in Memphis? And I would imagine that you have both CBD, which is not the oil, Central Business District, and how that varies from the suburbs.
Memphis is really unique in that downtown to many is a central business district, but really it's almost limited by the river. And so you can't really grow much west because you're just limited with the river. But we really think our central business district is in what we call East Memphis. And so that's really where there's more land to develop newer buildings. And it's most central to Memphis. It's most central to the suburbs, to downtown, the tri-state area, Memphis and Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. So being in the more East Memphis area, you can bring employees who live in Mississippi, who live in the suburbs north of Memphis, a lot easier to the East Memphis area, not just to downtown, a little bit tougher, a little bit further out. As far as most industries we see is a lot of healthcare. So of course, FedEx is here as well. So we have healthcare, St. Jude, FedEx, AutoZone are really International Paper, some of our biggest tenants and largest employers here.
Okay. So I have one other question for you. Do I hear a New York accent there? I don't know how you picked up the New York accent.
That is so funny because I get that pretty often. People will say, they'll say, where are you from? I'll say Memphis, and they'll look at me and I'll say, well, my family's from Connecticut. And they go, oh, okay. I never truly picked up the Southern accent.
No, you
A
did.
little bit.
You do. You have it. I was just kind of joking.
Ah,
All right.
I
so
can't hear it, JC. I can't
my
hear it.
Southern?
No.
I can hear there's a little bit of a Southern accent there. You know, it's certainly not a New York accent. All right, let's move on to the next question and forget about the timer. I think I'm going to get rid of the timer. Boom, the timer is gone. Are investors seeing a decline in real estate values? And if so, will we see a rebound in 2021? And I'm going to start with Jody on this question.
Right. So, I mean, again, this question is very dependent on what kind of property type you're talking about. So again, this is one of the research that I think we put out last month or early this month, in which we looked over all the loans that are a part of CMBS universe, which is thousands and thousands of those. And we just looked at which loans have actually seen an appraisal value reduction. And surprise, it's hotel and retail loans. You know, that is what we expected. But the surprise was that it was almost 30% valuation cut. So that was unexpected, exactly. And all that happened, and this cut was only from March of this year to October. So just in this much period, this much amount of time, whichever loans have been reappraised, we saw that bigger cut. And again, that is data that some of the investors, CMBS investors, and also CRE investors who are our clients are looking at, and even appraisers are looking at to see what will eventually happen in the market. So that is essentially where we have seen valuation cut. We haven't seen much in office space, of course, and industrial is just a different world altogether right now. So yeah, and multifamily too, but the biggest impact has been in hotel and retail.
Okay. Melissa, any thoughts? You're in
No,
industrial.
I echo Jody. Of the properties I've looked to buy or put offers on or have offers on, or everything, all the values have gone up. Nobody, I guess at the beginning of COVID, people thought there may be, let's wait and see, let's see what happens. But industrial just took off, and values just seem to be increasing. As a matter of fact, we had a building portfolio, a portfolio of 6 buildings trade here in Nashville last month. A group, Starwood, bought some shallow bay industrial here for $157 a foot, which was a record pricing for us here in Nashville. So we're not seeing values drop. We're seeing them increase, and we're seeing them increase pretty rapidly.
And Casey, so you're in the office market. That may be different, should be different from what Melissa is seeing.
Yeah, I tweeted the other day that our research has shown actually an increase in asking rates, and I really attribute that to some of the shorter term leases. Tenants are looking for the flexibility, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for it. Trying to get the 3 years by offering, or 3 or 5 years is good here in our market, and trying to incentivize by offering concessions, but there's still nice handful that's looking for 12 months and kind of, I hate to say this term, but the wait and see approach is just every 6 months. It's like wait and see what happens. And, we've been in this for about 8 months now or more. And, it'll probably catch up sooner or later. But right now we seeing an increase in our rates. Yeah,
that's interesting. During the Great Recession, I've been through 5 or 6 recessions. I've got a white beard, so I don't have to tell people how old I am. But what we always saw was in the midst of the recession, maybe 7 months to a year into the recession, particularly retail properties, you got to see shorter term leases. Everybody was going with the 3-year lease, approximately a 3-year lease, in the hope that they get to renegotiate or do new leases at the end of 3 years, and the property values and the lease values would increase. It's interesting that one of the things that I noticed during this last recession, I was doing a lot of legal work for a special servicer in Southern California, doing foreclosures and a lot of evictions and rent collections post foreclosure. And one of the things that you get to see is when the special servicer, and I'm hoping that you will confirm this, Jody, but when the special servicers are doing a lot of foreclosing and taking properties back, they will, in order to fill up the space, they will start doing short-term leases or even longer-term leases, but at a significantly reduced rate. And that just brings the whole market down. So I think that if there are a lot of foreclosures over the next 6 months to 12 months, we will see all of that start coming down. And that's kind of what I'm expecting. Jody, you have any comments on that?
That is a valid point, Howard. But one thing I would like to add is that the market is operating in a very different way in this crisis as compared to the last financial crisis. That was like a housing problem. Right now we have a demand side problem in the fact that just demand has just diminished. We don't go to malls, we don't go to hotels, offices. I haven't gone to the office in past 8 months or so. And another thing is that because of the nature of this crisis, just how fast it's escalated and how fast the recovery can be if we get a vaccine soon and people start feeling comfortable with going about their normal life, just based on the fact that the recovery can be quick, is that right now special services are actually working on forbearance agreements rather than foreclosing on properties. There are a lot of distressed assets, but they're trying to provide a certain amount of time for these borrowers to continue making these payments. Right? In the hotel space, what we have seen is when a forbearance agreement is signed, they would let them use the reserve balance to make these payments for let's say 6 months or so. And after that, the borrower has to make a larger payment on a monthly basis. So they are trying to give a certain amount of time, let's say 6 months or 12 months, to make sure that we are all able to sail through this. But again, it is all dependent on the recovery. If it doesn't happen in 8 months, we will see a lot of properties out there in the market. And we will see such kind of rent reduction that you spoke about.
When you say 8 months, 8 months from when?
Well, it depends on which property you're talking about. Hotels, we started seeing forbearance agreements in April and May. That was really because that was a property that which is impacted the fastest. So that is where we saw it starting then. And just to quote, I think I was just reading this today. There's a Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, $975 million loan, and they have a forbearance agreement until the end of 2020, and that was executed sometime in August. So it's very dependent on the borrower, on the servicer. But yeah, these will expire, and the hope is that these expire once we already start seeing the recovery, because otherwise we'll definitely be in a pickle.
Yeah. So let's move on. And let's start with Casey. Maybe I shouldn't, because you haven't been on the show that. Is there a major takeaway? It's fair, since you haven't been on for the whole show, for you to say, I haven't been on for the whole show, so I don't have one major takeaway. But if you do, pipe up.
I like to, I don't know what the entire conversation was about the AMC movie theaters, but I think Melissa and Jody made a great point regarding them. Is it really sustainable at this point with the social distancing in effect at the movie theaters? It's kind of going to be really sad to see, and hope for the best. I enjoy going to the movie with my movies with my father. It's probably the only time I really go, so I enjoy that time and would hate to see something happen to the local movie theaters here. And a good point, Melissa, that the production is going to be slow and it's going to have a long lag time. So hopefully there's a way that these movie theaters can be successful. I realize that our local movie theater has a full bar and apparently happy hour every day. So if you're not going to see a movie, I guess you could just go there for happy hour. But I really thought that was an interesting topic that you guys are talking about when I joined on.
Melissa, what's the one big takeaway that you might have with regard to this live stream?
So, Jody, I loved your presentation. Thank you for putting that together and sharing that. So, question for you. I don't know if you said this or you were going to say it at the end of the broadcast, but do you have, obviously you do that report on a monthly basis. Do you have a email distribution list or some way for us to go online and sign up to receive that report every month? I want to, you've kind of piqued my interest. I want to learn more. And CMBS is not something that I'd always kind of, studied or learned much about. So I really was fascinated by the information you shared and how much it lined up with what I'm seeing as a broker, with boots on the ground and anecdotally.
Right. Yes. So firstly, to answer your question, yes. We do have an email list which we send it out to. On TREP website, we also publish blogs on a regular basis. So that is something we also do at the beginning of the month. I mean, there is so much content that you will eventually come to figure out what is something that really piques your interest. But because of the fact that you work in the industrial space, we did publish a report on the industrial sector. I would say it was last month, but I can definitely send that over to you. Yeah, most definitely. And I'll make sure that you're added to the email list there.
Jody, what's your one big takeaway?
I would actually go back to the fact that, I have been researching in this market for quite some time, and I've been seeing and talking about the trends that we see in our data. And I already, because of the fact that, it's not only CMBS investors that are looking at our data, but also brokerage firms and also CRE investors who are trying to get an idea of how a geographical location or a property type is performing. I really like the fact that I was able to confirm what our data showed with what Melissa said. I was happy to, just get that confirmation that that is what you're seeing on the ground. And that was very interesting. And the second thing, again, also points to the industrial part that, you are seeing valuations increase, the property valued at a higher price. That is something we definitely expect. But we haven't seen that in our data yet, only because of the fact that in CMBS market, appraisals are only, or most of the times, done when a property is kind of troubled. It is already not performing well. So that is a good data point to learn. So thank you for that.
Great. And so I'm going to start closing up shop here. What I will mention is that when I edit the video, and actually this went pretty smoothly, so there's not a lot of editing for me to do, but this will become an audio podcast as well as a video. I will make this available, might even by the end of this weekend, because there's not a lot for me to edit. But in YouTube and on the video, maybe everyone could send to me the information on how to contact you. I haven't asked you whether or not I could put out the email, so give me the information that you're comfortable for me to put out there for people to get a hold of you. I want to remind everybody who's watching this, whether or not you're watching it live, which could be, or whether or not you're going to watch the recorded version, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also want to mention that I've got an upcoming sublease webinar with my co-host, Peter Morris. We're going to be talking about, I guess I read recently that in many of the markets, a good portion of the available space is sublease space or assignment space. So Peter and I are going to be talking about things that landlords and tenants should be paying attention to either in the lease or how to negotiate those sublease or assignment provisions. And I'll be writing that outline out this weekend. Also want to remind everybody that Melissa and Casey have been gracious enough to invite me to participate in their CRE chat, which was supposed to be after this show, but will be next Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time, correct?
7:30.
7:30 p.m.
7:30, okay. I'm an early person, so I get every place early. And so I'm going to be answering a lot of questions having to do with leases. I don't know what the questions are going to be yet, but that's why I was so easy on Melissa and Casey, because I didn't want to get caught in embarrassing questions. I'd like to avoid them. And our next CRE TV Live will be on November 5th with Andrew Bermudez is one of my first guests on that. And I think that I'll have to check to see why we didn't have anybody commenting. I'm assuming it's because I messed something up in the registration process. But everybody will be able to watch this on a recorded version. And if you have any suggestions I think we'll be out of beta, because this actually went very smoothly and went very well. And we're just about a second over. So thank you very much. You all did great. Just loved having you on, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Howard.
Thank you, Howard. And
Bye-bye.
nice meeting you, ladies. Thank you.
Great to meet you,
Nice to meet
Jody.
Yeah, nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.